Okay, so picture this. It's the middle of the night. You hear a siren wailing in the distance. And usually, I mean, that sound means help is on the way, right? Like someone's in trouble and the cavalry is coming to save the day.
Right. You expect the heroes to show up.
Exactly. But in the world we're stepping into today, that siren means the exact
It
opposite.
means the destroyers have arrived.
Yeah, it means the firemen are here, but they aren't sliding down poles to rescue kittens or put out a kitchen grease fire. In this world, firemen start fires. They are the flamethrowers.
Yeah.
They burn books, they burn the houses that hide the books, and sometimes they burn the people who read them.
It's honestly one of the most famous inversions in all of literature. You take the ultimate symbol of safety, the firefighter, and you just twist it into this symbol of state-sponsored destruction. It's incredibly visceral.
It really is. And we are, of course, talking about Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451.
Yeah.
But before you roll your eyes and say, like, hey, I read that in 10th grade, hold on. We aren't just doing a book report today.
No, definitely not.
We're taking a deep dive into a stack of sources that treat this specific story not just as a classic novel, but as a dystopian warning that hits a little too different right now in 2026. Specifically, we are deep diving into the audiobook experience of this nightmare.
And that distinction, reading it on a page versus listening to it, is actually the linchpin of our whole discussion today. Because the source material highlights something super fascinating. When you sit down with a physical book, you're in control.
Right. You set the pace.
Exactly. You can skim a boring paragraph, or you can pause to digest a really heavy idea.
You can just close the book when it gets too scary.
You can, but with the audiobook, you are strapped in. The source argues that the audio format completely amplifies the psychological tension because you are subjected to the controlled pacing of the narrator. You can't look away. You have to endure the silence and the noise just like the characters do.
That is a terrifying thought, just being held hostage by the narrator. And I guess the mission for this deep dive is to really figure out why a story written over 70 years ago feels, as one of our sources put it, disturbingly modern. We want to understand why having the story poured directly into your ears makes the warning sound like a siren in your own living room.
And to understand that we have to look at the world Bradbury actually built, because it's not just about the firemen. The core premise here, and the source emphasizes this heavily, is that this isn't a world where the government seized power by force overnight.
It wasn't a military coup.
Right. It's a world where society willingly chose distraction over depth.
That's the part that always gets me sweating. It was a slow drift. So let's set the scene for everyone listening. What does this world actually sound like? Since we're focusing on the audio experience, what are we hearing?
We are hearing noise, just constant, overwhelming noise. The source describes the atmosphere as being full of fear and urgency, but it's completely masked by a wall of sound. In the book, they have these things called seashells.
Which are basically earbuds. I mean, Bradbury predicted AirPods in 1953, which is wild enough on its own.
He really did. And the characters have these little thimble radios plugged into their ears, tight 24/7, just blasting news and music and mindless chatter. And if they take them out, they have the parlor walls.
Oh, the giant floor-to-ceiling screens.
Yes, screens that take up 3 entire walls of the living room where they interact with these loud, colorful, completely nonsensical, quote-unquote, families.
So silence is practically illegal, or at least it's deeply suspicious.
It's essentially non-existent. And the source notes that a great audiobook narration really captures this auditory assault. You get the mechanical drone of the skies because there are jet bombers constantly flying over the city, mixed with the inane chatter of the seashells. It creates this intense sensory experience of paranoia. You literally start to feel that pressure in your own chest as you listen.
It's sensory overload as a lifestyle. And living right in the middle of this cacophony is our protagonist, Guy Montag. He's a fireman. He's the guy actually holding the kerosene hose.
He is, and at the very beginning, he loves it. The opening line of the book is, "It was a pleasure to burn."
A classic hook.
And you hear that in the narrator's voice, this sort of grim satisfaction. He is a perfectly functioning cog in the machine, but his whole arc is about waking up.
The source actually mentions a specific audio nuance regarding Montag's internal life. Because he's not allowed to talk to anyone about his doubts, right? It's all locked up in his head.
That's right. In the physical text, you just read his thoughts. But in the audio, the source points out that the narration physically captures his internal confusion, shifting into real emotional intensity. You literally hear the crack in his armor.
So it starts out robotic and gets messy.
Exactly. It starts as a mechanical recitation of his duty, but as he meets people who challenge him, the narrator's voice for Montag becomes more frantic, more desperate. You hear the panic of a man realizing he's been entirely asleep his whole life.
And the person who wakes him up, the alarm clock, so to speak, is Clarice.
Clarissa McClellan, the teenage neighbor.
I really love the description of her in our notes. She's labeled the free-thinking young woman, but in this specific world that makes her a dangerous radical.
Yeah.
What does the audio format bring to her character?
Contrast. Pure contrast. If the world of Fahrenheit 451 is loud and aggressive and fast, Clarice is the brakes. The source describes her tone as calm rebellion.
Calm rebellion. That's a really sticky phrase.
It is. She doesn't scream at Montag. She doesn't lecture him about politics. She just asks some really simple questions. Are you happy? Did you know firemen used to put out fires? In the audiobook, her scenes are often incredibly quiet. The background noise drops away, and that silence is what rattles Montag. It's so unfamiliar to him that it almost feels violent.
It's like when the power goes out in a busy office and suddenly you can hear the hum of the refrigerator and it feels weirdly loud.
Exactly. She forces him to sit in the quiet, and that is totally fatal to the system.
Now, if Clarice is the quiet, her polar opposite is Montag's wife, Mildred. And man, reading the breakdown of her character, it's just bleak. The source calls her a reflection of society.
Mildred is the absolute tragedy of the story. She is the ultimate consumer. She represents emotional emptiness. She is plugged into her seashells all night long. She spends her days talking to the fake family on the parlor walls.
And this is where the modern relevance really punches you in the gut. The source connects Mildred explicitly to isolation, despite constant entertainment.
It's the great paradox of our time, isn't it? She is constantly connected to media, but she's completely severed from reality. There's a really dark scene where she overdoses on sleeping pills. And not necessarily because she wants to die, but because she's just so numb she forgets she already took them.
And when Montag tries to talk to her about it the next day, she doesn't even remember.
Nothing. She just denies it and goes back to her screens. And the source highlights how the audiobook brilliantly portrays her emotional void.
How so? Like, how does a voice actor do that?
A skilled narrator gives Mildred this hollow, brittle enthusiasm. She gets super excited about the white clown on TV or a new script for the parlor walls, but there is nothing underneath it. It sounds like a pre-recorded message. It really drives home the idea that you can quite literally be entertained to death.
It's the iPad kid phenomenon, but she's a fully grown woman.
She is the absolute prototype for the doom scroller.
Yeah.
Just swiping for the next tiny hit of dopamine, terrified of having a single unoccupied thought.
So we have Montag waking up Clarice, asking these quiet questions, and Mildred totally zoning out. But then we have the monster of the story, Captain Beatty.
The antagonist, the fire captain.
Here is where I want to slow down a bit, because the notes on Beatty are fascinating. Usually the villain in a dystopian story is just a brute, or a screaming dictator pounding on a podium. But the source explicitly praises Beatty's monologues in the audiobook as being intelligent, persuasive, and dangerous.
Beatty is terrifying specifically because he's not stupid. He's incredibly well-read. He can quote the very books he's burning. He uses literature to destroy literature.
So why does the source say the audiobook makes him even more dangerous?
Because you have to sit there and listen to his logic, and here's the really scary part, it makes sense. There is a seductive rhythm to his speech. The source mentions that when Beatty explains the history of why they burn books, the pacing actually speeds up. He explains that they didn't burn books because a dictator took over. They burned them because the people wanted it.
Ah, yes. This is the short attention span prophecy we read about.
Right. Beatty explains that books didn't get banned overnight. First, they just got shorter. Hamlet became a one-page digest. Then it became a summary. Then just a headline. People wanted things snappy. They wanted the gist. They completely lost the patience for nuance.
That is painfully accurate. I mean, we literally live in the era of TL. DR too long didn't read.
Exactly. And Beatty weaponizes that exact human impulse. He says, why read a book that makes you sad? Why read a book that challenges your worldview? It just makes you unhappy, so burn it, be happy. In the audiobook, his voice is often described as reasonable and calm. He sounds like a caring father figure explaining why candy is better than vegetables.
And honestly, that's way scarier than a guy with a gun. A guy with a gun forces you to obey. A guy like Beatty convinces you that obeying is actually for your own good.
It creates an ideological trap. And listening to it, you find yourself nodding along for a second before you catch yourself. That's the psychological pressure the source talks about.
So this brings us to the real pay. So what are the deep dive? We've got the characters, we've got the setting, but why does this source label Fahrenheit 451 a dystopian warning specifically for 2026? It seems like Bradbury had a crystal ball.
It's unnerving how accurate the list and predictions is. We've already touched on a few, but let's look at them collectively. Social media addiction and mass media addiction. Bradbury saw that screens would eventually replace human relationships.
We mentioned the short attention spans too, the constant condensing of information until it's basically meaningless.
But there's another one. The source flags cancel culture. Now, obviously, that's a loaded term today. But the source points out that Bradbury describes the mechanism perfectly. In the book, Beatty explains that minorities and special interest groups, dog lovers, cat lovers, doctors, lawyers, Southerners, Northerners, everyone was getting offended by something in books.
So to avoid offending anyone,
you flatten everything, you remove all the sharp edges, you make everything bland and safe, and eventually you just get rid of the books entirely because they are too messy and controversial. The source argues that Bradbury wasn't warning about a government censoring us from the top down. He was warning about us censoring ourselves from the bottom up just to stay comfortable.
That's the core argument, isn't it? The source says he warned about society willingly choosing distraction over depth.
That is the absolute crucial takeaway. If you take nothing else from this deep dive, take this guy. The firemen are a symptom. They are not the cause. The cause was apathy. The cause was people preferring the bright, loud colors of the parlor walls over the difficult, quiet work of actually thinking.
It completely shifts the blame. It's not, look what they did to us. It's, look what we did to ourselves.
And that creates a very specific kind of horror. It's the horror of looking in the mirror.
So given all of this, the intense audio experience, the scary accuracy, what is the final verdict from our source on this? Is it a must listen?
The ThinkIQ review gives it a 4.7 out of 5. That is a massive score.
High praise. What do they list as the standout strengths?
First, it's short but impactful. It doesn't drag at all. The emotionally intense final act is noted as a huge highlight. When the chase begins and the city goes to war, the audio experience just becomes incredibly immersive.
And I imagine the timeless warning factor plays into that score.
Yes, it just feels urgent. It doesn't feel like a dusty museum piece.
But to be fair to our listeners, nothing is perfect. What are the weaknesses? Who might not like this experience?
The source is very balanced here. It notes that Bradbury's style can be quite abstract. He uses a lot of metaphors. He talks about pigeon-winged books and light and shadow. If you want hard, concrete, tactical sci-fi, this might feel a bit flowery to you.
And it's definitely not a romance, right?
Definitely not. The source explicitly says it prioritizes ideas over romance or deep relationships. Montag and Mildred don't have a sweeping love story. They have a tragedy of disconnection. And even Montag and Clarisse, it's a meeting of minds, not a romance.
So if you're looking for save the girl, save the world kind of action thriller,
this isn't it. It's deeply philosophical. It asks big questions. It's really for thinkers, students, and frankly, people questioning digital culture.
I feel like that target audience includes pretty much everyone I know right now.
It should. If you've ever felt that phantom buzz in your pocket or realized you've been scrolling for an hour and can't remember a single thing you saw, this book is aimed directly at you.
Okay, let's wrap this up with a final thought. We have a 4.7 out of 5 rating. We have a book that predicted earbuds, flat screen walls, and the total death of the attention span.
And we have a source that leaves us with a really powerful closing concept. The story isn't just about burning paper and ink. As the review puts it, it's about burning curiosity, burning thought, burning individuality.
And the audiobook format just turns the volume up on that fire.
It does. It makes the message unavoidable. You can't skim past the warning when it's being spoken right into your ears.
You know, talking through this, I keep coming back to that idea that the people stopped reading before the firemen even showed up. It wasn't taken from them. They gave it away.
They surrendered.
So here's the question I want to leave you with today, and it's a bit of a provocative one. If the firemen in Fahrenheit 451 only exist because the people stopped caring about depth, are we currently acting as our own firemen?
That's the question.
Every time we scroll past a long, nuanced article to watch a 10-second reaction video, or every time we choose the hot take over the actual research because it's faster, are we striking the match ourselves?
Are we burning our own capacity for thought one swipe at a time?
It's a haunting thought to carry around with you. But hey, maybe it's the kick we need to put the phone down for a bit. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Fahrenheit 451. Stay curious, keep reading, and we'll catch you in the next one.